Hello everyone and welcome back to Crystal Clear Tarot. Today's video is a little bit different and a little bit deeper. We're going to be talking about something known as the shadow, what it is, why it shows up in our lives, and how tarot can be one of the most powerful tools for understanding and integrating it. This is not about fear or negativity, this is about awareness. Because once something is brought into awareness, it stops controlling us from the dark. And instead, it becomes something that we can work with, understand, and ultimately heal. So what is the shadow? In psychological and spiritual terms, the shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we suppress, deny, or feel uncomfortable acknowledging. These can be emotions like anger, jealousy, insecurity, shame, or fear. But they can also include patterns of self-sabotage, avoidance, people-pleasing, addiction to validation, and even deeply buried wounds from the past. The shadow is not bad, it's simply unconscious. And anything we push into the unconscious doesn't disappear. It builds pressure, it leaks out through triggers. It shows up in projection, where we see in others what we refuse to acknowledge within ourselves. And over time, if ignored, it can begin to shape our choices, our relationships and sense of self without us even realising it. This is why awareness is so important. Because what is unconscious will always find a way to be expressed. But what is conscious can be transformed. Tarot and the shadow path with tarot is not just a tool for prediction, it is a mirror. And some cards in the deck are especially powerful when it comes to shadow work, because they do not hide the uncomfortable truth. They reveal it. They invite us to face ourselves honestly, without judgment and with compassion. So let's explore a few of these key archetypes. The Devil, facing attachment and illusion. The Devil card is often misunderstood. It doesn't represent literal evil. It represents bondage. It reflects the way that we become attached to behaviours, thoughts, relationships, or patterns that limit our freedom. This could be addiction, toxic cycles, obsessive thinking, or even the illusion that we are powerless. But the most important message of the Devil is this: the chains, they're not locked. They are just believed to be locked. Shadow work with the Devil asks, where am I giving my power away? What am I afraid to release? What am I choosing out of fear rather than truth? This is where awareness begins, not in judgment, but in honesty. The Tower, breaking what was false. The Tower represents a sudden awakening. It is the moment where illusions collapse. Sometimes this comes through crisis, loss, or unexpected change. But on a deeper level, the Tower is the destruction of false identity structures, beliefs we built about ourselves that were never truly aligned. It can feel intense because the ego resists change. But the Tower is not punishment, it is liberation. It clears what was never stable so that something more authentic can be built. In shadow work, the Tower asks, what beliefs about myself are no longer true? What am I holding on to that is already collapsing? What truth am I finally ready to see? The Hermit, entering the inner world. If the Tower is destruction, then the Hermit is retreat. This is the sacred act of turning inward. The Hermit represents solitude, reflection, and inner guidance. In shadow work, this is where integration begins. Not through distraction, not through avoidance, but through stillness. This is where we sit with ourselves honestly, where we begin to notice the patterns, where we start to hear the quieter voice beneath fear and reaction, the voice of inner wisdom. The Hermit asks, what happens when I stop running from myself? What truth appears when I sit in silence? What am I being guided to understand within me? The Moon, entering the unconscious. If the Hermit is conscious reflection, The moon is unconscious revealed. This is the sacred journey into the hidden parts of ourselves. The moon represents illusion, intuition, dreams, fear, and the mysteries that lie beneath the surface. In shadow work, this is where we begin exploring what has been buried, not to judge it or to fear it, but to understand it. This is where hidden emotions rise up, where old wounds, limiting beliefs, and unconscious patterns reveal themselves through symbols, triggers, and intuition. The moon asks, what am I afraid to see? What illusions have I mistaken for truth? What hidden part of myself is asking to be acknowledged, healed, and brought into the light? The Ace of Swords, clarity and truth. The Ace of Swords is the breakthrough moment of understanding. It is mental clarity cutting through confusion. In shadow work, this is the moment of insight where denial ends and truth becomes visible. It is not always comfortable, but it is freeing. The Ace of Swords is the truth that liberates you from illusion. It is the thought that changes everything once it's seen clearly. It asks, what truth have I been avoiding? What belief needs to be cut away? What story am I ready to rewrite? This is the sword of awareness, and awareness is what transforms shadow into wisdom. Judgement, awakening and integration. Judgement is one of the most powerful cards in the entire tarot deck when it comes to shadow work. This is rebirth through awareness. It is the moment we stop running from our past and instead begin to understand it. Judgement is not about punishment, it is about integration. Every part of your story, every mistake, every wound, every version of yourself that you've outgrown begins to make sense in a new way. This is where healing truly becomes possible. Judgement asks, can I forgive myself? Can I rise beyond who I used to be? Can I answer the call to become more whole? This is awakening, not to become someone new, but to become fully yourself. Everyone has a shadow. It's part of being human. Many of our shadow traits are formed as a protective response in childhood or during emotional experiences where we didn't feel safe to express ourselves fully. For example, anger may come from feeling unheard. Control may come from feeling unsafe. People-pleasing may come from a fear of rejection. The shadow is not random, it is adaptive. But what once protected us can later limit us. So this is why awareness is so important. Because when we understand where something comes from, we gain the power to change how it continues. Psychologist Carl Jung described a concept called individuation, which is the lifelong process of becoming a whole and integrated human being. Not perfect, not idealised, but whole. He compared it to an acorn becoming an oak tree. Everything needed for the oak already exists within the acorn. In the same way, everything you need to become your full self already exists within you. But it unfolds through experience, awareness, and integration. Individuation asks us to go beyond persona, the version of ourselves that we show to the world, the ego, the identity we cling to for safety, and instead explore the deeper layers of psyche with honesty and courage, even through the pain, even through depression and loss, because sometimes those are the moments where we meet ourselves most truthfully. And this journey of becoming whole is beautifully reflected in one of the most powerful cards in the tarot, which is the World. The World represents completion, integration, and wholeness. It is the final card in the major arcana, and in many ways it symbolises the successful completion of the individuation process. Where earlier cards in the journey show fragmentation, challenge, and transformation, the World shows the integration. It is the moment where all aspects of the self, the light and the shadow, the conscious and the unconscious, the strengths and the vulnerabilities, are finally acknowledged and held in balance. In the imagery of the world, we often see a figure dancing with a wreath surrounded by 4 fixed signs: the lion, the bull, the eagle and the angel. These symbols represent the full spectrum of human experience and awareness. Nothing is excluded and everything is included. This is what individuation ultimately leads towards. Not perfection, but wholeness. The world reminds us that when we go deep and do the inner work, when we face the shadow, integrate our experiences and move through awareness with courage, we eventually arrive at a place of inner completion, a place where we no longer reject certain parts of ourselves, a place where we no longer need to become someone else in order to feel worthy, a place where we can finally say, I am all of me, and in that moment, individuation is not just a psychological process anymore, it becomes a lived experience, a grounded sense of peace, a quiet understanding that nothing within you needs to be exiled to make you whole. Everything belongs, everything has brought you here, and everything is a part of the journey home to yourself. Shadow work is not about fixing yourself, it is about understanding yourself. And it begins with awareness, noticing the triggers, noticing the patterns, the emotional reactions without immediately suppressing them. And from there, reflection becomes important. Journaling, meditation, doing tarot readings, or even quiet observation that can help you see what is beneath the surface. And then comes the integration. Instead of rejecting the parts of yourself, you begin to understand them. Not all anger is destructive, not all fear is weakness, and not all insecurity is truth. Sometimes these emotions are messengers. They are asking to be heard, not silenced. And throughout the process, compassion is essential, because judging yourself just keeps the shadow hidden, and compassion will bring it into the light. When you bring tarot into shadow work, the cards become mirrors. The devil will show you the attachment. The tower shows the collapse of the illusion. The hermit shows the inner truth. The moon reveals our inner wounds. And the ace of swords shows clarity. Judgment shows the awakening, and the world shows the fully integrated self, whole and free. And together they form a journey, not of punishment, but of understanding and ultimately integration. So if you are in a season of shadow work right now, know this: you are not broken, you are becoming aware, and awareness is the beginning of transformation. The goal is not to eliminate the shadow, it is to understand it, to bring it into consciousness and to integrate it with compassion. Because wholeness is not about being light all the time, it is about accepting all the parts of yourself without rejection. And when you do that, something powerful happens. You become grounded, authentic, and deeply free. Thank you so much for watching. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with anyone who may need support on their healing journey. And leave a comment below. How has the tarot helped you with shadow work? And as always, take care of yourselves, trust your inner wisdom, and enjoy the journey. Bye for now.